Welcome, everybody, to the Cone of Shame Veterinary Podcast. I am your host, DrAndyRoark. Guys, I got a good one for you today. I am here with Dr. Emily King. If you don't know Dr. Emily King, you are not on the social medias at all because she is everywhere in veterinary social media. And she was the first person I saw kind of doing a bit of a breakdown on the Tucker Carlson Joe Spector interview that came out a couple of weeks ago. And so I thought I'd bring her on to talk a bit about that. And we talk a little bit about sort of the social media work that she does, how that social media work actually shows up in her practice. Like, what do you see in your clinic when you have like this big social media following? We talk a little bit about that. And then we get into the interview. And so she was a bit frustrated with that interview, as was I, just around the portrayal of vet medicine and some of the things that were said in the interview that did not feel or check out to be totally truthful. And so one of the things that we talked about a little bit after we stopped recording was, there was a statement in the interview about the AVMA doesn't support telemedicine, and that's just not true. There was a couple of things like that came up in this Joe Spector Tucker Carlson interview, and we sort of get into that a little bit. And I don't know, just the general conversation out in the world about the cost of veterinary care and sort of the vilification of veterinarians is something that's kind of in both of our minds. So anyway, guys, that's what we get in and talk about. I think it's a great episode. Let's get into it.
This is your show. We're glad you're here. We want to help you in your veterinary career. Welcome to the Cone of Shame with Dr. Andy Roark.
Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Emily King. How are you, my friend?
Great. Super excited to be here and talk with you today. I've listened to the podcast for quite a period of time. And so now I'm like, wow, man, I'm on the Cone of Shame. This is pretty cool.
Oh, well, I'm having the same experience. I'm like, I see Dr. Emily King all over social media, and she has got a huge following. For those who don't know you, most people probably know you as, I don't want to say an influencer. I don't know. Do you see yourself as an influencer? Do you see yourself as a content creator? Like how do you see yourself in that sphere?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I'm older, right? So I don't even necessarily understand how all of this works, But I think that really, I suppose content creator, joy provider, laugh creator. I don't know, like a number of things potentially.
I told you this right before we started recording, is that, I really do enjoy your stuff. And I just think you're such a good representative for vet medicine. You were so positive. And you were genuinely funny. You were very funny, which is why you've been so successful on social media. And you're funny in good, uplifting ways. And you don't fall into the traps I see a lot of people of client bashing, of being negative, of getting attention by tearing other people's things down or even just sort of venting and things. I mean, you're clearly there doing the work of trying to lift people up and everything. And I'm such a big fan of that. And over the years, I've watched you sort of grow your online empire and influence. And you've always seemed to me as someone who really does it for the right reasons. And you make me proud of vet medicine, just sort of in the way you represent it. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. That's a huge compliment. I don't, never consider myself necessarily a representative of the industry, but, I think that's something that should be considered when you're out there putting out information, because I hear so frequently how negative or how upset people are with the industry and all the negativity around different concepts in the industry. It can be really heavy at times.
I see you as a representative, whether you like it or not. And the same thing is true for me. I put these things out there and a lot of people look at them and I feel a burden of some sort of I know a lot of pet owners are looking at what we do, and I look at other people in our industry are looking, and I don't want to lead us down a path of negativity. I'm still in it with the hope that people will trust their veterinarian and people will say, yeah, I think the veterinarians are largely really good people. And so I kind of lean into that. You're also the founder of All-Star Vet Clinic. You started your clinic in 2003. You sold to Southern Vet Partners in 2021. What's that transition been like? Are they supportive of the work that you do online? Do you have to toe the line? Did you just tell them, I'm just doing this and you guys could deal with it? Surely they don't have approval of the things that you do online.
No,
what's that like?
No, not at all. Actually, it's completely hands off. We were doing a lot of stuff before they even purchased the clinic. And Harrison is a huge resource in the space and was working at the clinic as well. And they kept him on, and he still works with the clinic and produces all the content for the clinic. They understand the value in doing that. We're a little unique from the perspective of there aren't a lot of clinics that are in the same boat as All Star from a social media perspective.
Yeah.
And so they've been able to kind of learn as well as we've continued to grow and as they've experienced that growth. They absolutely have never, not even once, said anything to me about, listen, I don't think you should talk about that. I don't think that your opinions, you shouldn't share your opinions about corporate medicine or private equity or any of that stuff that involves them. Never once said, hey, can you tone it down? Can you say this? Can you say that? Never have asked me to say anything. So I can't say enough about that. I mean, it's completely autonomous.
They've never said, Dr. King, if you spent a little bit less time making funny videos,
you could see more patients
in the exam room. You would see more patients. So, okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's right. So actually, the first thing I'll just throw this question out because I have it in my mind. You clearly, you work really hard at this. I mean, it's obvious you put in the effort. You're consistent. You create a lot of content. It's consistently good. There's no way. Like I've tried to play this game. I played it for years. People don't realize how hard it is to make stuff, especially if it's positive. That's like playing with one arm behind your back, is that you're trying to do uplifting positive things. That's playing on hard mode. What do you see as the benefit to your practice from the empire that you've kind of built? I say empire. You've got hundreds of thousands of followers, but do your clients come in excited to talk to you about what's online? Do you think most of them are not aware of the work that you do online? Like how much do you see the actual work you're putting out into the world? Because people all over the world are watching your videos. My question is how many of them are actually coming to your practice, and what does that do for the clinic?
Yeah, like how does it locally affect the community? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that when Harrison came to the clinic and said, hey, this is what I want to do for All Star, nobody's doing this yet. And his primary objective, which kudos to him, was really, to sum it up this way, basically, he wanted people to know us before they knew us. And so his entire objective was for people, because in veterinary medicine, establishing a relationship and then having follow through on said recommendations is where the hurdles can occur, right? And so if we can already establish trust, and if people can already know us before they know us, then we're kind of starting to clear those hurdles ahead of time, which was really powerful. And when he said that to me, I was like, whoa, okay, that's something. And that's why I think almost every clinic should be doing it, because I think in your community, you want to be a trusted voice in the community. You want people to jump when you say jump, right? Because they believe in what you're saying and they follow what you're saying and they can trust what you're saying because they're seeing the content and what you're producing on a regular basis. And they feel like they know you, right? Part of social media is you feel like you know the person that you're consuming content from. And so that was a huge part of pursuing it, and then also the effect of pursuing it.
So you have seen people who come in and they're like, oh, this is the place. I mean, you have clients that roll in already kind of like they know the staff by name. Is that
that's the thing, right? I want to see the veterinarian who does the quirky videos on busting myths, or I want to see the veterinarian who does this, or, so we'll see that from time to time. People love it when their pets are in the videos. So we'll ask, hey, listen, like I was doing the French Bulldog. I was doing this one episode or some content, and I was like, oh my gosh, we have this great client. She's going to love it. And so I called her and I was like, hey, can we use your dog in a video? She's like, oh my gosh, yes, da 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 da.
That's funny.
So
that's fun.
And I think the other effect that we saw, sure, we have no issue recruiting, really honestly, which is huge in market.
It's a great advantage.
But it was a stress relief for staff. I mean, people like to laugh and they like to have fun. And it's an important part, or it's a way, I guess I should say, of completing the stress cycle. And we all know that there's stress in and out of clinics. And so if we can provide a way, and we don't make people participate in social media at the clinic, it's only if you want to, but it is a way of really...
Is there anyone there who just does it? Who dodges the camera? Oh, really?
Oh,
okay.
Absolutely.
I was wondering, like at this point, like you guys do so much. I was like, have those people been weeded out?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. We have we basically have a group that we're like, who wants to be a part of this group? And then we use those people to do social media. But if I come around the corner and this, I have one person who's in surgery and she's like, oh my God, no. She's really adamant about not being on camera, and she's good sport about it if we catch her by accident. But, she would prefer to be present on camera. And so, we respect that, obviously.
Oh yeah. You did a video just a week or two ago, right after the Tucker Carlson interview with Joe Spector, the CEO of Dutch. And it was the first video that I saw of someone coming out talking about this interview. So I watched the interview, and I have my thoughts about it, but I hadn't put pen to paper. You kind of did. It was fairly shortly after the interview came out, and you sort of did one of those videos sort of from your car, and you were like, hey, I'd like to I'd like to talk to you guys about this and kind of what it means or what my take on it was. And Emily, I thought your take was really good. And I also, again, really appreciate the fact that you have such a big audience. And a lot of them are pet owners. A lot of them are groomers and breeders and people who are very serious about their pets and about the industry, but they're not really in the industry. And so anyway, I thought your take was pretty good. Do you want to go ahead, and I'll just kind of open the door here. So Tucker Carlson, if you guys haven't seen, I'll put the link in the show notes, but Tucker Carlson interviewed Joe Spector, who's the co-founder of Dutch. And Dutch is a veterinary telehealth company, if you guys aren't familiar with it. Joe Spector was also the co-founder of Hims and Hers, the websites that you see a lot of ads for. They're the ones where you don't need to see a doctor. You can just go online and talk to someone virtually, and then they can get you generally the GLP-1s or the medications or the erectile dysfunction pills that you're asking for, and they hook it up. And so anyway, that's kind of who he is. Can you sort of give an overview of kind of what you saw in this interview and what sort of bothered you about it or what your perspective was?
I mean, I think that my biggest complaint as I was watching this, I mean, and I kept having to pick my jaw up off the ground because I was like, there was a general lack of curiosity on Tucker Carlson's part, which I was like, come on, like seriously, like you're just taking everything that he says and not challenging any of the information. And Joe Spector's general approach was these broad brushes about the industry. And I was like, hold on a second. Like, if people, and my issue was that Tucker Carlson has such a large audience that the potential to create damage was large. And I think that I'm just so tired of veterinarians dodging daggers, they're not in it to upsell, and that's just not who they are. And so when you have somebody like Tucker Carlson being like, oh yeah, this is the world we live in. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, aren't you going to ask any other questions?
So I just written this article at the time, and it hasn't come out yet. But it's a hard thing when you write and you publish it. It has like a 2-month turnaround time. But I had just written this piece, and I've been writing a little bit, and I've been starting to get a little bit of heat. And so I'm going to see kind of how this sits with you. I have been really pro sort of spectrum of care and contextualized care for a long time. I really think that keeping care affordable is really important. I believe that we kind of need to meet the individual pet owner where they are. And some people can do things and other people can't do things. It's not our job to judge. It's to work with them and try to get the best care possible. And at first, I've always been concerned about the rising cost of care. And recently I started to get more concerned about that. Like the cost of care is going up, and there's a lot of different drivers for that. In the interview, of course, Joe is talking to Tucker, and he's blaming it on private equity. Like the private equity people are here and they're driving these costs up. But the truth is, inflation in vet medicine really mirrors inflation in human medicine. Like they're both basically the same level of inflation. And the biggest sort of drivers for inflation for us in a lot of ways is our wages for our staff. The cost of everything is going up. And so staff need to get paid more, and we're paying rent. We're paying for all the things. We've got tariffs on medical supplies. Like we've got a lot of things that are driving prices up. That's not really private equity, but I'm still concerned about the cost going up and up. But then, Emily, I started to get worried. About a year ago, I started to hear more and more voices that were really leaning into like, these costs are out of control and we have got to get them down at any cost. And I stopped and I looked at some of the people who were shouting that out. And some of those people, I was like, hey, wait a second, what are you doing here? And you know what I mean? And my position, and I think I get in a little bit in trouble with this, is I'm a little bit worried about us putting affordability as the number one thing that vets should be talking about.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of people who really want to beat the affordability drum for maybe not good reasons. So like, there's no question why Dutch is on this interview with Tucker Carlson talking about affordability. It's because they want to be able to sell online medications without people having to get a physical exam for a veterinarian. Like that's why they're there.
And what's the definition of affordable? Who's going to define affordable?
Right. I mean, there is no definition. It's definitely going to be there. And so there's a number of factors that I look at, and there are companies that support mid-level vet practitioners. And I'm not saying that they're good or bad. And I think that the answer is probably there's a mixed bag there as far as what could be good and what could be bad. But there are definitely people who are pushing mid-level practitioners because they don't want to pay for vets. They'd much rather see appointments without paying vet salaries or out having veterinarians. And again, like, I'm not saying this is evil or good or bad, but I'm saying I don't know that those people are really invested in affordability and getting quality care for pets. I think that they are looking and saying, I can make a lot of money if I didn't have to have veterinarians.
Yes.
And so they're loud and proud about the affordability of care. And so anyway, this sort of really crystallized that idea for me is I don't want us to become wildly expensive. And I am concerned about keeping care affordable. And I know that there are people who can't afford to provide the highest level of care for their pets. And I don't like that. And I want to work against that. At the same time, I think we do have to be careful about the people who are like, this whole system is rigged and corrupt and the private equity money is everywhere. And these vets are just greedy, because I don't think that those people are actually acting necessarily in good faith either. And so anyway, I've just kind of laid all of this down. It sounds like you're on board. Do you kind of see it as that we need to navigate these conversations, but maybe down with high prices is not the uniform mantra that everybody should be shouting without asking any questions?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I don't see how you can say go down with prices, and yet I want to pay veterinary technicians this much. And I want them to have a good quality of life so that they can do the things that they need to do and have the budgets that they need in their personal life. And so we want them to make this much. But at the end of the day, when you own a veterinary clinic, it is a for-profit. I mean, you are running a business. You should expect a return on your investment. Now, I do not think veterinary clinics are gouging people. I think that we talk about profitability ranges, and does somebody think that 10 to 20% profitability is like killing it and knocking it out of the park? I don't think that, and to maintain those margins is extremely difficult. And, price increases, if somebody's charging you more because now, you have this medication that you're trying to stock, or this piece of equipment, or, whatever it might be, you are going to raise prices in order to maintain the margin. I think that there's confusion when people think, oh, you're raising prices, and so then therefore your profit margin's going up. No, that's not actually what's happening. I'm trying to just maintain my profit margin and keep staff. So I think that's where I think there's a little bit of a myth there.
Do you think that pet owners kind of understand this nuance? Like you have such a big sort of voice in that world. Do you think that most pet owners, when we say, hey, look, guys, maybe it's not all about vets trying to get more and more money, do you think people are open to that idea, or do you think that people are pretty skeptical?
I think it is our job as veterinarians to establish value. And when people don't take the time to do that, then you're going to see those arguments. I had this really good video where I basically took this is where all the money's going. Here it is. It's not a secret. Here we go. You start with $1 million and here it goes. And you're left with $100,000. You know what I mean? And I think when people hear that and we're willing to have transparent conversations about that, I think that they do get it. I think the people that care about the people in the industry, and I think there's tons of them as far as pet owners go, that want to see the people in the industry supported and doing well and value what we give back to the communities. I think they absolutely understand. And I think they are supporting us. I think you get this small margin of people that are just vocal as all get out and are just driving discontent day after day, trying to get people to not believe what their veterinarians say. Oh, you're only saying it because of this or this. And so, yeah, I mean,
because of the kickbacks you get from the dog food companies.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. When you start to think about sort of messaging with pet owners and out in the world, do you engage with those voices very often? Do you find value in sort of indirect engagement with those voices, or do you more think we're just going to continue to try to do good work, focus on the value that we create, and talk directly to the pet owners ourselves? What's your idea about what's most beneficial?
I try and respond to everybody that DMs me, which sounds crazy, but we do. And I try and take the negative comments and look at them, because I always feel like even in practice, anytime that you get negative feedback, there's always something you can learn. You may not agree with this part of it or this part of it, but there's always something you can take away. So then what I try and do with that information is say, okay, there's some kind of disconnect here and what people are thinking or how they're viewing the situation. It's so easy for people to form a story in their head and they're not looking at all the facts. And so what I try and do is just really take that information and then put out facts and be like, hey, listen, here's what's actually happening if you want to know, and hope that then we can sway those people into understanding some of the more difficult concepts that we're managing.
I think that totally makes sense. So, Emily, overall, when you start to think about, I don't want to say public relations for the vet world, but when you think about engaging pet owners online, are there other sort of areas of interest or topics that you feel like are top of mind for pet owners today that maybe vets aren't talking a lot about or thinking a lot about, but it definitely seems to be something that your sort of engaged pet owners seem to care a lot about?
I think just understanding the processes that happen in a clinic. I think so much we do it on a daily basis, and so it's kind of just like memory for us. And then understanding what those experiences look like for the pet owner. And so then helping them understand, okay, when your pet's at the clinic for this is what this actually looks like, or this is what's actually happening, or understanding why we do some of what we do from the standpoint of diagnostics. Getting that information out there, I think, is really helpful. So when they hear that from their veterinarian, they're like, I've heard that before. I know why you might be asking me to pursue that type of therapy or that type of diagnostic or treatment.
I see the curiosity level at like an all-time high about what actually happens. I think that's probably a side effect of just about having people who feel more empowered and more engaged, right? I think the days of people showing up for their own healthcare and just doing what the doctor says, I think those days are long over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to be your own healthcare advocate. I feel like we're seeing that more and more in the pet space. Do you agree?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think human medicine, oh man, they're kicking and dragging. They don't want people doing that at all. To have to think, I think because they're set up a little bit differently from the standpoint of they have a lot of structure that's sent down to them, like you need to handle these situations this way and you need to do this in order for this. And so it's a little bit of a different framework. And I think veterinarians historically, and I was talking to somebody else about this the other day, and I was like, I feel like you and I grew up in a great time period to be a veterinarian, right? I mean, we learned from people who had to use their hands and their head and what they learned in order to form diagnosis and treatment plans. And they might have had some diagnostic tools, but maybe not the best. And then as we aged into veterinary medicine, we started to get more and more diagnostic tools, And so now we have the best of both worlds, right? We can guess. I feel like we're really good at guessing. And then, but we also have these diagnostic tools that are really helpful at forming diagnosis. Yeah. And so I think the young people are struggling with that just a little bit. And I think that's another area where just trying to teach them, like, listen, you had mentioned spectrum of care the other day. I think that a lot of them are uncomfortable with that because ultimately the responsibility falls on them to come up with a diagnosis. And that's scary, right? It's like, oh, what if I'm wrong? You're going to be wrong. Just get over that hurdle. Just assume you're wrong at some point, Like, just rip that Band-Aid off.
Do you think a lot of young vets hold on to the gold standard as like a security blanket of like, as long as I do the best thing, no one can say that I came up short, right? Like, that's what we always worry is, well, this person's not really able to do this, or it just isn't really feasible in this case. I think you have to have a certain comfort level to say, hey, look, the best thing that we could possibly do would be this. But, given where we are, I think a more conservative approach would be this. I've always sort of thought that ability to say, well, this is the more conservative approach. It's always been that it comes from experience. And I've had people on recently talking about training veterinarians in spectrum of care. And I think trying to train young doctors about options, I think that's really great. But it's got to be hard as a young doctor, doesn't it? When you don't have a lot of clinical experience to say, what is my B plan when I really haven't seen this case go down before. So
absolutely. And I think it's just really important for them. I had a case the other day that was chocolate toxicity and 2 dogs in the same household, and the owner didn't know who ate the chocolate, right? So I had to make both dogs vomit. And you can imagine that this could get really expensive quickly for this owner, right? Yeah. So the one dog didn't eat anything. It had nothing in its vomit. The other dog ate everything. It was clearly obvious this dog was the culprit. And
not sharing. Right? He was not sharing.
And so it's like, I could have hospitalized the dog. I moved it from basically moderate to very mild based on vomiting and the amount that it ingested and whatnot. I could have hospitalized. I could have put him on fluids. I could have rechecked labs the next day. I mean, I could have done all those things. Yeah. But taking into account, like, okay, this is going to be really expensive. And I don't feel like I did wrong by not doing those things. Do you know what I mean? And so like being able to balance that, I think is where the younger veterinarians struggle. And you're right, it does come with just clinical experience.
It is that balance. And again, it sort of goes back to that spectrum of care and kind of playing in the middle. We do need to be able to meet pet owners where they are, right? That's a key component of having trust with those people, of getting them to getting the care done. Like none of this matters if the pet owner goes, I can't do that, and they leave. So getting care done is critical. And at the same time, I still see veterinarians as the advocate for the pet because the pet owner doesn't know like how. I'll never forget. Before I went to vet school, I had a dog and I took him to get neutered, and he was my first dog. Like that was my dog. And I went to the vet who I liked a lot, and the technician was sort of checking him in for his neuter, and she was like, "Do you want an IV catheter and fluids?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't know." And at first I said no because I was a broke college student, right? And then I was like in the parking lot going, oh my God. And my girlfriend, who's now my wife, was in the car with me, and she was like, "What did we do?" You know, and like, and so I went back in, and I said, I would like to change my request
order
because I want to change my order. And again, it was like but it seems so silly, but like Emily, I didn't have any, like, he was young and healthy, and it was probably fine, but also like what does he need, and what's the part of this? And I think it's fine in that case if you want to say, well, you know, you selected the more conservative outcome or a path. But I said, yeah, but I selected because I didn't know what I was doing. And then, like, what if something had happened to my dog and they'd been like, we told you it would have been better, but I didn't really understand. And so there's that balance of advocacy of, I want people to kind of know what we're talking about and what's possible while helping them. So anyway, I think this type of communication is really rich. I think it makes our profession interesting. I think it makes the exam room interesting. I think it really highlights the value for building relationships with our pet owners, which I think you do so wonderfully online. Emily, thanks for being here. Where can people find you online if they're like, who is this person? I've been living under a rock. I have to see this.
You can find me on Instagram or TikTok at Dr. Emily King. Of course, All-Star Veterinary Clinic. You can always find me there. So yeah, those are probably the easiest and best places to get a hold of me.
Outstanding. Well, thank you for being here. Guys, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'll talk to you guys later on.
Thank you.
And that's what I got. Guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to Dr. Emily King for being here. Gang, take care. I will talk to you later on.